Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Coalescence podcast. I am your host, Wyatt Sutherland, and my co host is Kasey Long. And
Hello,
today,
everyone.
right, um, and today we're going to start off with something a little different and just see where the conversation goes. But we initially we're going to start a new series today, and it's going to be an incredible series when we start it. I'm super excited about where it's going, but I, just kind of impromptu, um, I watched Burnham's Inside special on Netflix, and I asked Kasey if he wanted to just do an episode where we just discuss our feelings about the special and everything that it was, and he thought it was a good idea. So um, I guess I'll start off with okay. So like, what did you feel when you watched it? I know you've only watched it once, right?
Yeah, I only watched it once, and that was earlier today while I was at work. Don't tell my boss. Um, I I don't really know what I felt watching it. Um, you know, during the first little bit of it, before we continue, spoiler alert. This entire show is a spoiler alert warning. If you plan on watching this. With that being said, it kind of started out a little happy go lucky, a little, I don't know.
Yeah, like more leaning into the comedy special that
Yeah.
Netflix is advertising it as.
But then when he sung, I think the name of it was How the World Works, and he introduces the sock puppet talking about neoliberalism and
The
historical
Marxist sock puppet.
genocide. Yeah, I was just like, whoa, okay. This is definitely taking a turn. So, definitely a roller coaster of emotions watching it, but for the most part, I liked it.
Are you familiar with Bo Burnham's earlier work, his earlier specials and whatnot?
Not really, man. I'm going to be honest. Until you recommended it, um, that was it.
Hmm.
I've never heard of him before in my life.
Well, that's kind of his bit has always been that he's a musical comedian. So he he gets up, he does a stand up comedy, and he always has a piano and other various instruments, and he makes pretty much the adult secular version of Silly Songs with Larry from Veggie Tales. I don't know if you ever watched that as a kid, but I
Oh
did.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He essentially makes like the adult secular version of Silly Songs with Larry, and his work has always been really contemplative, of like the nature of art, the nature of comedy, um, the nature of sort of just human interaction as time has gone on, um, in our day and age. And but I feel like this special on Netflix was so much more than a comedy special. Like I'm not even sure if if comedy is what that Netflix should label it. I
Oh.
feel like it's so much
Mm-hmm.
more.
Oh, absolutely. There is no way this this show this uh, yeah, I don't even feel right calling it a comedy special. This documentary, this pandemic
Right,
documentary,
exactly.
it's it's definitely more than just a quote unquote comedic show. Because when he starts talking about depression and mental health, and he's it the bit where he's like playing a game, crying in his room, and all that stuff, and he's singing that song. language warning called shit about, his depression and stuff. Dude, like that, it, it almost feels like he's using this as an outlet to lament about his mental anguish. And, let's face it, the pandemic, it messed with us all, man. Isolationism has never been as high before. Well, I'm sure it has been. The bubonic plague wasn't a nice period of time, but um, you know, a lot of people face isolationism. Isolationism,
Yeah,
Jesus, I cannot talk tonight.
it's so much. It's the problems, and what I want to get into is we're a writing channel, and so what we talk about is writing, and I feel like that this special, this piece of art has loads and loads and loads of narrative relevancy um, to modern art, modern literature, or really modern isn't even the right term, but we might get into that later. But definitely, I feel like mental health is up there and the themes that he was trying to address. But I think the biggest theme, and anybody who's watched the last few episodes of this show know that I'm all about theme. Theme is what I feel like is the key to creating great works of literature. And the theme of Bo Burnham's Inside is not it. It's many things, and it can be read in many different ways. And the way that I read it um, was that we just have gotten to a point in society where we are disassociating ourselves from reality um in ways that cannot even be fathomed. Like technology is draining away human interaction. The corporate and economic atmosphere of our social order is continually dehumanizing people. And and Bo's Burnham's interpretation of how to address that um, is fascinating, because he is like, he knows that he's just this one guy. Like he knows that he's experiencing this as an individual. He's experiencing all of the world, all of these problems, and he even is self-aware about the fact that he doesn't experience all of the problems. He's like the first song, or healing the world with comedy. He starts off talking about how he's just like this white guy, like he's just like this straight white guy, um who doesn't even experience all of the problems. He knows the problems that he knows. He feels the problems that he feels. And the fact that he is in a position of privilege as a as like a straight white guy doesn't seem to, for him, diminish his sense of I'm struggling too. And it's all so real and raw, but also at the same time, it's like this staged performance. And like there's so many other videos, like since I watched it, I've just downloaded um so many talks and so many like video essays and reactions and stuff like that. And like there's so many great videos talking about the philosophies that he discusses, talking about the performance and the filmmaking aspect, which is phenomenal. um so yeah, but I'd really like to just get into the narrative of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. One thing that really stood out to me, and again, when it comes down to the foundations of it, I cannot talk tonight. We are a literature based podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing I want to discuss as well, Wyatt, since we're on this subject, is how artists, especially writers, utilize these outlets like Bo did as a means to express their depression or whatever, you know, ailments they had at the time. Because as writers, we all have our flaws, and I wouldn't necessarily say mental illness is a flaw per se. That's getting onto a whole other level. But I think as writers, we see people expressing their depression and their anxiety and stuff in their works, just like Bo did with Bo Burnham Inside. So yeah, let's talk about it, White. I'm on board.
Um, so I think one of the most interesting things, like I said, his biggest theme is just talking about. Okay, let me restart. I think this is my baseline thoughts on what Bo Burnham's Insight is, and that is Bo Burnham's Insight is the perfect, I would say, borderline perfect, if not the perfect postmodern autobiographical piece of literature. Um, the way he uses all of our modern technology that he has at his disposal, the way he uses his musical talent, the way he embraces a lot of musical styles, and the topics that he's talking about in the frame of his personal experience during lockdown, um, is probably, I mean, I know this is going to be just blasphemy as a writer, as a novel writer, to say, but I don't think any other medium could have communicated the things that Bo Burnham was trying to communicate. He used the exact right medium, the exact right style, everything so perfectly, and um it's like I'm kind of caught because I know I've watched Bo Burnham stuff before, and I knew that he disappeared for a long time. I didn't know why until Inside, but um he I'm not sure if this is a comeback for Bo Burnham as much as it is a masterpiece. And not to I like I would really I don't know, I don't think Bo Burnham's going to watch this show, but if he does, hi, you're amazing. But uh it's not to put on too much pressure, but I'm not exactly sure that what he's going to do after this. I think maybe he'll probably go into more filmmaking because he's already made one film, um called Eighth Grade. It's about a student going to high school. um but he outdid himself with this. And the narrative is all about feelings of disassociation, derealization of the self, and how you connect with others, how you connect with the real physical world around you, and how those connections are being misplaced at best and destroyed at worst by almost everything around us, and replaced. Those connections are being replaced with like almost like cybernetic augmentation. It's like he views the modern world in like this cyberpunk way of, the song, Sexting, where, I mean, at face value you can just take it as, um just it's just a song about, it's a goofy song about sexting where he's making fun of the idea of sexting. But deeper than that, like there's one lyric in the song where he says the internet was made for nights like these. And that lyric is telling, because somehow, some way, he, these corporations and tech corporate, not just the corporations but the tech itself, has somehow been able to infiltrate and replace one of the most intimate human relationships that you can have in your life, and replaced it with emojis. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
and it's that level of disassociation and derealization with reality that he addresses over and over and over and over again in the show. Different ways, talking about different aspects of those struggles. And that's an incredibly, um, relevant theme for something that is inherently an autobiography.
What did you think of his song Bezos II, where he's it's the song where he's like really satirizing Amazon.
Mhm.
What did you think of that?
I'm trying to remember Bezos two. I'm just trying to remember the tune. I remember Bezos one. Um, I think both were so interesting because, like, this is the year, that 2020 and earlier was when the concept of billionaires even came into being. Like, think about that. Like, never ever in history before the last 3-4 years, if I'm remembering correctly, was the concept of a billionaire, someone with that much wealth, a one individual with that much wealth, was even conceptualized. And then
And
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, go for it. I was about to get off on
Oh,
a whole other
well,
spiel.
I'll just say this one more thing. And, you know, I again, there's a surface value to the song, which is just making fun of Jeff Bezos, making fun of Amazon, taking a riff on the company. But you can't, some of these things you can't divorce from the context of what he's talking about. Like, he's talking about Jeffrey Bezos in the middle of a global pandemic. People are losing their homes, people are starving, people are getting sick and dying, people are not getting health care. And Bezos is making more money than ever with Amazon. Like, because of the pandemic, Bezos is not just in spite of the pandemic, but because of COVID, Jeffrey Bezos is making more money than ever. And I think that is one of the things that Bo Burnham is addressing whenever he made those songs. He's saying, you you made it. Like, the second song, he's like, congratulations, you made it, you did it. And then the earlier song, he's like, he names off a couple of other very wealthy people, and just says, all of them are just scrubs, compared to you, because you had it. You have the business model that can take advantage of any situation, and continually. I mean, what other things could that even be about? Like, not just the fact that Jeffrey Bezos made more money than ever during the pandemic because of the pandemic, but also, like, 2020 and 2019. were some of the most transparent years of workers getting fed up with working conditions, um, at Amazon plants and factories, and loading warehouses and such. Um, like the whole pissing in the bottle thing. And then recently, just to tie this into one of our other episodes, I saw an article that was about stunt extras on the sets of Lord of the Rings getting injured, and Amazon failing to report them properly and compensate them properly.
And you know, with this podcast, you all know, listeners listening in to us, you awesome people, we try our best not to be political with this. So if you feel like we are, by all means let us know. But I think something has to be said since we are on this topic, Wyatt. Um, as a publishing company, unfortunately, the way the business is right now, we do have to rely on Amazon as one of our, outlets, and that's completely fine. But when it comes down to it, everyone deserves a safe work environment and protection from their employer in the event something happens. Like on the set of Lord of the Rings, if one of the actors got hurt, they should not have to worry about whether their employer is going to pay for their health care or not. And that's just not a trend with Amazon. That's a trend with all of the big corporations and even some of the smaller ones. Um, I know a friend of mine who works at a local factory. He had his finger chopped off at one of the machine presses. Um, Luckily, he got it sewn back on, but he was out of work for 4 weeks. And he kept telling me, Kasey, I can't report this. Like, I cannot go after my employer. Yes, they'll pay for the bill. And yes, I don't have to worry about them quote unquote retaliating on me immediately, but I'll lose my job within 5 weeks of me doing this if I reported it and wanted them to pay for it. He lost his job. He ended up having to report it because sewing a finger back on is not a cheap endeavor, you know. And sure enough, 4 weeks later, his employer let him go. And that's a shame that as a society our workforce has to be fearful of their employers. I think in a perfect world, nobody should be fearful of anyone, but we're never going to see a perfect world, is the sad thing about it. But if anything, the employer, I think now, is starting to understand, wow, these people are really starting to understand that they're worth more than $7.25 an hour. You know what I mean, Wyatt? Like
Yeah.
when I this past weekend for my birthday, I went to Cherokee, North Carolina. I like seeing I like seeing that place. It's where some of my family's from. And I just love the area. And they have a Taco Bell there that's hiring people for, I think it's $13 an hour with $1,000 sign-on bonus. Last year, you would never have seen $1,000+ sign-on bonuses, man, and that
Mhm.
blows my mind.
So yeah, and one of the things that Bo Burnham kind of addresses is that there are good and bad aspects to these relationships we have with technology. For like, he did a skit where he's talking about branding, and he's talking about brand identity and making sure that brands support the right ideas, how it's not about uh, he says, "What do you believe in?" Bagel bites. You know what I mean? Like, and it's no longer really about what is the quality of your product. It's about making customers, making and manipulating customers in a market economy to identify with your product. It's classic Coke versus Pepsi stuff, except now in our world today, it's so much more nefarious because it's not just about like having the right jingle or using the right color scheme. Now it's about how much do you support the things that are going on in the social zeitgeist. Uh, does Coke support Black Lives Matter? Does Amazon stand for? He says, "Will you support wheat thins against Lyme disease?" and stuff like that. It's like the corporations are now knowledgeable that people care about these things, and these corporations also know that if they can convince people that they are on their side, that the corporations are on the people's side on a given issue, those people will be more likely to buy said corporation's product. um, and for instance, Jeff Bezos isn't going to lose money from Bo Burnham or me or you or anyone taking a riff on his business practices, because Amazon is still a service that people are going to use no matter what, and that's kind of like the existential dread that I think Inside as a work dwells in, because it's like it's these technologies that have taken us that have given society a form of progress. I won't say it's the best form of progress, but a form of progress where we have access to information and we have access to connection on a total on a much wider level. We can build communities like the LGBT community. How much stronger is the LGBT community made by having the ability to express themselves online, to have anonymity, um, and to be able to connect with other people. Um,
You
that
know,
that's the good thing about this technology, but there's the good things, and then in the song "Welcome to the Internet," he lives in that dichotomy between the things that the internet lets us do that are docile, and then the things that the internet allows us to do, gives us to do, maybe even pressures us to do, that are weird at best and evil at worst.
have you ever heard of a book called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, this entire conversation over the past like 10 minutes, I'm really getting some Brave New World vibes in it. Not not all of it, of course. For those of you who have read it, there's obviously some things in that book we're not going to talk about on this podcast. But one thing I do want to talk about is the dystopian society and the social hierarchy status that we're starting to see integrated into our own society these days. Amazon being one of the biggest corporations doing it right now. Again, I really hope we don't get sued for talking about Amazon like this, but um, Amazon is one of these companies that's responsible for creating this dystopian society that we're starting to see. Another book, Wyatt, that's really hitting my mind right now that I cannot think of the name of. It's a dying planet genre book. It's I could have structured that sentence better, but anyways, it's a dying planet story, but it's very dystopian based as well, in the sense that it's this techocracy, this world ran by technology and technological authoritarianism and all this other, crazy stuff that we're starting to see come out right now. Um, and these corporations in this story ran the world, man. There were no governments like we see today, nothing like that. It was strictly corporation based. And they use technology to enforce their authoritarian idealism on the population. And because of the amount of technology they were using and the fact that they were harvesting all these resources, the planet was dying. And of course, in the story, the elite has a backup plan. They have another planet that they can go to and harvest and all this other stuff. While the citizens are on this dying planet, Wyatt, but they don't realize that it's dying. The corporations are letting them know, like, our resources are fine, our water's clean. The reason the sky is blood red is because of stratosphere changes due to this new life extending gas in the atmosphere, just stuff like that. And the citizens are buying it, Wyatt. And that's the type of society we're starting to go into. Um, just the other day, I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He had um, an Amazon Echo device. I'm not going to say the name of her because I have one in my room too, but he did not know that she listened to him. And, we had this conversation, and he, honest to God, Wyatt, did not believe that he was being listened to by his electronic devices. He believed that the filter bubble, which I'll get into that later, was just a myth created by, you know, right wing or left wing extremists, whatever, to scare the population. And I'm like, no, like everything you're seeing, well, everything we're talking about here is real. And I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, and again, like, uh, it's like Bo talks about that, and Welcome to the Internet. He has a segment where he completely changes the song. It's musically profound, like just unbearable, like just an incredibly complex way that he uses chord progressions in the song. Um, but he switches the style for a second, and he's just talking about it, and he goes, "Your time is now. Your insides out. Oh, how you grew." I can't exactly remember. That last line might be different, but he says you're inside out, your time is now. It's all about, he's saying it's all about the present with the internet. It's all about the present. It's all about what's happening now. And everything, like even without the echo devices, right? Like your Google searches are recorded and tailored to you. So when you Google something else, like for instance, I'm playing Mass Effect again because I'm crazy like that. um and I'm playing Mass Effect again, and I go to search something. And then later I'll search something different, and it's like these alien planet names. And I'll search one planet name, type in Mass Effect, and I find it. I look up whatever I need to, and then go away. And then I go to search something else, a completely different planet name, just gibberish as far as the algorithm is concerned, but it's able to recognize that I'm talking about a Mass Effect thing because I've been searching Mass Effect things. So even without your devices, quote unquote, listening to you using your camera or your speaker to listen to you, these algorithms, they know how to tailor your internet experience to you, and they know how they're learning how to give you new things that maybe you would have never looked at, but the algorithm says this is connected to this, this, and this, and this, and you like all of those things, so here. And you don't need speakers or cameras to do that. All you need is people's search history, and they have that. They're a private company, and Google is a private company, and it has the right to all of the information that you give it, and we give it a lot. And
Absolutely.
and one of the things that struck me, and I'm a millennial, but I was born in 1996, and like I pretty much grew up with the internet, even though it was really old. Like I remember dial up, but it was kind of getting phased out by the time that I was in upper elementary school. Um, I remember MySpace, and one of the things the most interesting aspects of the special is that he interrogates the relationship between performance and authenticity. And a lot of people say that the Zoomers are the most affected by this, and maybe that's true. But on it, as growing up, and going through middle school, I felt like my life was a performance. Like I got that distinct feeling. Um, Even though all I had was MySpace and early Facebook at the time, I still felt like I needed to perform something. And maybe it was just because I was already doing a lot of performing anyways. In my day-to-day life, interacting with people, um, trying to be something that I wasn't, not being authentic with myself. A lot of those things were going on, but the technological impact I felt as well, from even as early as MySpace and the beginning of Facebook. Um, and it's like, you know, it's so ironic though, because we're doing a podcast, and the audience, we might, I feel completely genuine and authentic on this podcast. I don't know if you feel that way as well. But
Oh, of course.
the audience, the audience is always going to question. It might be actually healthy to continue doing that, but is always going to question, are these people being real, or is this just a performance to get me to watch? And so many content creators on the internet are having depression, anxiety, panic attacks, stuff like that, um, because of that feeling of having to perform all the time, because of the atmosphere, the social atmosphere that the internet has created.
I know there are a lot of artists, especially with the pandemic going on and the way society's changed, and it's hard, man. It is. Even as writers, we have to, we perform as well, but through our literature that we create. And even that's starting to change to base themselves off of the societal norm. Now, I'm not going to do that. Um of course I'm not going to do anything that's going to get me canceled. But just for an example, you me and I'll say this over and over again. Your top two genres, Wyatt: fantasy and young adult. Those are going to be your top two genres right now. And there's a lot of authors that feel like if they are to be successful, those are the genres they have to write or quote unquote perform in. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that. My genre is fantasy, yeah, but my other genre is cosmic horror. A very niche genre, but it's something that I'm passionate about. And I'm not going to let societal norms tell me that if I want to be successful, that's the genre, I have to write in. No, Lovecraft, just using him as an example, he's one of my favorite authors. You all know that though. Um, Lovecraft didn't get famous until after he was dead. You know, like his books did not become cult classics until after his death, and that is a shame because he was a brilliant author. But because of the society he lived in at the time, those books were very niche. You know, yeah, he had friends like Robert E. Howard who made it big, but even then, Robert E. Howard wrote fantasy. He wrote comics about the great barbarian Conan. Lovecraft talked about existential dread and the horror of the mundane.
Hmm.
So, I don't know, man. I'll say this to all of you out there listening. If you're a writer and you want to be successful, do not listen to societal trends. You write what you want to write. You write what your heart is telling you to. And I promise, as long as you follow your heart, you will always be satisfied with what you do. I promise you.
So yeah, and uh, we're going kind of. I can feel that we're going kind of long, um, but we'll kind of start to wrap up
Oh, I'm
here.
here all night, Wyatt.
we'll start. Well, we'll start to wrap up here with a couple of more points, and one of them is that I think probably what was your favorite song out of all of them?
Honestly, man, probably all time low, where he sings about his mental health.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah, and it's so short, but it's so accurate.
Yep.
Yeah, my girlfriend struggles with anxiety, but I don't. I have different struggles. So I've never really felt uh, that panic attack feeling. Um, but from everything that I've heard, uh, all of the people commenting on this say that it was very accurate to the feeling of having a panic attack. Um, I think me personally, my favorite one was um, that funny feeling really spoke to me. I don't know if you remember which one that is. It's the one he did. It's the only one he did with the guitar, I think. Um,
Oh man, it's on the tip of my
yeah,
tongue. I
yeah,
hate that.
uh, yeah. It's like
Hmm.
there it is again, that funny feeling, and I was just like, oh my god, like it he's kind of it's a double entendre because he's saying that funny feeling like we're watching a comedy special. It's funny, there's some funny things happening, whatever. um
Oh,
but
this funny feeling. I think that's the name of the song.
yeah,
Is it the one where he like breaks down at the end of it?
I can't remember if he breaks it. I think that might have been a different one. um but no, it's that funny feeling is such a simple premise because all he really does is kind of list off events and aspects of daily living in the modern world. Um, but the chorus of that funny feeling being such a double entendre for its comedy, but it's also, you know, for me, this the image that was conjured up whenever I heard that song was a lot of lonely days when I'm having a depressive episode, when I really do just sit paralyzed on the couch or the chair or whatever and just scroll. And it really is that when he said there it is, There it is, that funny feeling. It reminded me of every time that I've been having a depressive episode, and I have that sudden realization that I'm having a depressive episode. Like I'm sitting here on my phone, I can't think straight. I'm sad for no reason, and just this crushing weight, just keeping me from enjoying anything in life. And I'll think to myself, there it is again. And that song communicated that to me. Made me in a parasocial way feel seen. Like there it is, that funny feeling. And then he has the reprisal where he's saying, "Hey, what can you say? We were overdue." Um, I I felt it because that's like that existential dread again of when I'm having a depressive episode and I'm scrolling and I'm seeing news and I'm seeing all of these things that just kind of increase the potency of the depressive episode. All I can think is like, there's nothing to say. Like, what are we going to do? There's nothing. We can't do anything. And that's I'm not saying that that's a reality. I'm not saying we really can't do anything, but that's what my depression tells me. And then in the later song, "All Eyes on Me," probably one of my favorite lyrical progressions in the song is he says, "You say the ocean's rising, like I give a shit." Um, and then he goes on and says, "You say the world is ending, honey. It already did." And I've heard different takes on that, but for me, from my perspective, when he says you say the world is ending, but it already did. First off, I take that in two different ways. One, when I'm feeling depressed, it just feels like the world's over. It feels like it's done. And um, but then there's another way that I can take it, and that is in the broader context of the special as a whole. He says, "You say the world is ending, but it already did." I think one way that I take it is that the world that we knew before technology, the world that we knew before corporations, the world that we knew before the internet is over. It's we can't. There's no going back. Like any values, any political systems, anything that was based on a world before these aspects of modern life is over. It's gone. It's done. We can't go back. It's already ended. And that's kind of how I took that line. But that funny feeling just really stuck with me.
I know what you mean, Wyatt. Well, for those of you listening in, um, we obviously recommend you watch Bo Burnham's special on Netflix. Um, it's it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions. You know, you go in there expecting it to be this comedy show, and it is so much more. Um, and just because of the theme, well, the underlying themes of Bo Burnham's Inside, and themes of mental health and depression and all that. We, I think, Wyatt, it would be good for us to, you know, talk about one thing here. If you or anyone's needing help, if the pandemic's like, really got you down, or you're just in a place and you feel like you can't find help, Contact the local suicide prevention crisis center near you. The national number is 1-800-273-8255. Um, you know, there's nothing wrong with asking for help,
Absolutely not.
and there's nothing wrong with using your work like Bo Burnham did as an outlet for it. Anyone who judges you for that,
They
pardon
don't
my
know what it's
French,
like.
but yeah, they do not know what it's like at all. So you keep you keep using what you can use to help you, unless it's drugs. Don't do that. Or don't do anything illegal, actually. But other than that, do anything to help with your mental health. It is important. As writers are one of the most um, oh god, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, without using all the fancy words, writers are very prone to depression. Most artists are. Painters, musicians, but especially writers. Look at Ernest Hemingway. He committed suicide in 1961. And I think his not his great, but his granddaughter committed suicide as well. And you always hear stories about that in the writing community, but also in the art community, as a general statement. So, anyways, without rambling on too much longer, Wyatt, I think this is a good stopping point. What do you say?
Think so too.
All right, now on our next episode, we are currently waiting to hear back on a special guest um, for our genre series. So, until we hear back from them, we're gonna use this as an opportunity to explore some other elements of our podcast that we're wanting to incorporate. So, Wyatt, how about we do that world building show next episode?
I think it sounds fun.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in. Again, if you need help, seek it. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're a writer, keep on writing. If you're a reader, keep on reading. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be posting up our Discord here soon. And yeah, so thank you all. You take it easy, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye. Like, share, and subscribe.